This is the 8th installment of Everything I Hate About the Trucking Industry. In the last part, I talked about how pretentious people in the trucking industry can be, especially when you talk about your previous experience in the industry. I also talked about cliché excuses they tend to give the trucking industry for mistreating you. Now, we'll talk about some more false accusations people in this trucker form are giving me. But first, in a previous video, I talked about why I hated being a yard truck driver. I'm still getting negative comments from that video. Things like, the stop sign wasn't for the yard truck drivers, you shouldn't have stopped at them, even though I was sent to the office, because I was falsely accused of going through the stop signs even though I was stopping at them, so I still would have been sent to the office if I hadn't stopped. A literal example of damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter which decision I made, I would have been sent to the office. I literally couldn't win at that job. Some comments accused me of being rude to the other workers, which was not true. I was very polite to everyone, even when I was being falsely accused of running a stop sign. Some comments accused me of being lazy and just not wanting to do my job, which is an outright lie. In fact, at first, I liked the job so much that I kept accidentally staying past my scheduled time and working through my breaks. One night, I was having so much fun that I didn't even realize it was time to go home until 2 hours later. Finally, they sent me a message that read, "You know you were supposed to clock out 2 hours ago, right? So get off your high horse and stop talking to me about laziness." Some say it was rude of me to quit. To that I say, well, it was rude of them to falsely accuse me of hitting another trailer, then force me to work in a warehouse. Not to mention it was in 10-degree Fahrenheit with no protection from the elements. By the way, here's a diagram of the angle of attack I used when backing the trailer in question. I'll let you be the judge whether or not I was close enough to hit them. They claimed I hit the trailer on my right-hand side, which is impossible because the trailer I was pushing was closer to the trailer on my left. I watched the tires as I backed in, and they were perfectly aligned with the pavement markings. Unless I entered a parallel universe where everything was shifted to the left, it's impossible to have hit the trailer to my right. Also, I spent $10,000 so I could be a truck driver, not a warehouse associate. Not only that, but this warehouse was over an hour away. Why would I work over an hour away when I can do the exact same thing less than 10 minutes away from where I live? It was rude of them to kick me off the truck without even bothering to listen to my side of the story. So I told them, if you don't let me drive the trucks, I won't have a reason to continue showing up here. They claimed that they couldn't, so I left. If they ain't gonna listen to my side of the story, they ain't got no reason to listen to theirs. To them, it's only the words of the older employees that matter. If you're new here, what you say doesn't matter at all. Also, did I mention that one of my trainers demonstrated how to get someone out of your blind spot? By pretending like you're gonna hit them? I'm curious, would you say his common denominator was safety? What about the trainer that put down that he was inspecting the truck when he was actually just sitting in the cab for 15 minutes? What about the guy who gave me advice on how to cheat on your logs to maximize your drive time? This guy always put in that the last 15 minutes of unloading were actually a 15-minute break, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. You know, falsifying logs and all that. That's not very safe advice to give someone. Anyway, here's where we left off. I ran out of characters and explained further using a separate post. It doesn't really matter what I said because, like truck drivers tend to do, they either ignore it, quote mine it, add information that's not there, accuse me of lying or not telling the whole truth, or say it's your fault without explaining how it is. In fact, every single one of the subsequent responses can be easily summed up in the following categories. Number 1, the I didn't read your response at all but still decided to respond as if I know everything about you response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 1. Number 2, the adding new information that's not there and citing it as the reason you were fired response. We'll call that truck driver cliche number 2. Number 3, the everything's your fault. I don't know how, it just is, and I will not explain why I think it is because reasons response. We'll call that truck driver cliche number 3. Number 4, the you're just an idiot and this wouldn't have happened if you were smarter response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 4. Number 5, the I'm gonna accuse you of being a reckless driver without having ever seen you drive a commercial vehicle, or I'm ignoring the fact that you're a successful school bus driver response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 5. Then there's number 6, the how dare you expect the company to teach you how to use the equipment they gave you, you entitled brat, or don't expect anyone to hold your hand in this industry. If I had a dime for every time I've heard that stupid phrase response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 6. Oh, and who could forget number 7, the you're lying or you're not telling the whole truth, whatever that means, or this must be a prank response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 7. Like a cult, if you dare criticize the trucking industry, the company worshippers will use any excuse under the sun to gaslight you into thinking you're wrong. To these people, the great trucking industry is always right and you're always wrong. Anyway, let's play a little game I like to call Spot the Truck Driver Cliches in this post. Hint, some are so predictable that they have more than just one. In the previous part, it took too long to type out what everyone said, so I'm just gonna put it on screen so you can pause it. I'll leave them up for at least 10 seconds, which will give you plenty of time to pause it. I already read them and have a response ready. Okay, I was on the fence about this one, but this one has a tiny hint of cliche number 2. But only because he straight up assumes I knew these sites existed before becoming a truck driver. Like, what is it about truck drivers and assuming stuff about you? Before driving a truck, I googled, what's it like to be a truck driver? The websites I found told me, what I expected to read. Some said, this is a great job if you hate people because you can keep to yourself in the truck, which probably isn't healthy, and just pick up and drop off trailers. Which isn't true. I explained more about this in part 1 where I talked about how much customers sucked. All sites agreed that you could make over $100,000 per year starting out, which wasn't true. Even if I made the most that I've ever made every single week, I'd still only make $33,600 per year. There are multiple other places where you can make that much, so truck driving is nothing special. In any case, I only found out about these forms when I googled switching trucking companies with 3 incidents on your record. I was trying to switch companies before they fired me, but it turned out to be fruitless. As mentioned earlier, there isn't a single trucking company in this entire country, probably even in the whole world, who will hire someone with 3 incidents. In other words, I found out about these sites too late for them to actually be of assistance. Alright, let's add a cliche counter. I forgot to explain in greater detail about making car drivers back up. It's actually pretty hilarious how I used to do it. I'd drive up to the car, then the driver would get scared, frantically reach for the gear shift lever, and struggle to get the car in reverse. Also, if there is a line of cars, I wouldn't recommend this method. For the obvious reason that there'd be no room for them to reverse. In other words, look at the road you're turning to and judge it on a case-by-case basis. Also, I forgot to mention this cliche. Number 8, the you'll never be successful at anything else because you failed at truck driving response. We'll call this truck driver cliche number 8. You also could low-key call this a number 5, but I've heard this specific response enough times for it to become its own cliche. We'll count this as a number 5 and a number 8. Alright, next one, and this will be the last one because I'm running out of time. First of all, he said I'm, quote, trying to convince everyone that truck driving is the worst job ever, but If he actually read the comment, he'd see the part where I said, next to being a traffic flagger, it's the worst job I've ever had. I never made the argument that it's the worst job anyone could ever have in the entire country. I said it was the second worst that I alone have had. So right off the bat, that's a cliche number 1 and a cliche number 2, and we haven't even finished one sentence yet. Do truck drivers do this on purpose? As for why I feel I must convince everyone that Werner Enterprises is the worst company to drive for, I sure hope they're the worst because I can't imagine anything worse than them. As mentioned earlier, Werner Enterprises falsely accused me of willful malicious behavior, so as far as I'm concerned, they are the worst. I have never in my whole life ever worked at a company as dishonest as Werner Enterprises. They could have just told the truth and said I was fired for 3 incidents, but these cowards told such a terrible lie about me. I was really hurt when I saw their explanation for the reason I was fired. I took it as an insult. Imagine literally killing yourself for a company, and in the end, they practically tell everyone you were given orders but refuse to follow them. If I could meet the person responsible for such a lie against me, I'd have a few choice words for them. Words like, you are the absolute worst form of a human being and you are a coward. As well as other less than family-friendly words. Also, yes, dollar accounts are the worst type of commercial driving work I've ever had the displeasure of undertaking. I explained that in greater detail in the first few parts of this series because Family Dollar is the main thing I hated about being a truck driver. I couldn't even go to a Family Dollar after that because just being in one makes me so angry. Now, as for being set up by fate and circumstances, which I'm guessing he's making the argument that I wasn't, I got a question for this guy. What do you call not being told of the 5-foot rule, then the company getting mad at you for breaking a rule they never told you about? What do you call not being taught how to use extra equipment that you were expected to use? Like, how do these guys expect me to feel? Should I be grateful the company treated me like this? Should I say, thank you, Werner Enterprises, for never telling me about the 5-foot rule, then getting mad at me for not following it? Should I say, thank you for never telling me how to use a load bar and making me look like an idiot in front of the customer? I want to know what response they want me to have for what they did to me. This is a cliche number 3, hands down. He also says, keep this up and you'll be just like a specific school bus driver I had that I didn't like. So basically cliche number 5. I think you're going to be a bad school bus driver because, I don't know, reasons. Also, what makes him think I'm going to be a specific driver? You can't possibly know that because you don't know the events that led to that driver treating you like they did. And judging by how little of my comment you actually read, you don't even know the events that led me to think the way I do. Also, truck driver logic. You're a good bus driver, but you won't be for long because I say so. He also said that I should learn from the past, completely ignoring the whole point of the post, that being that the company didn't give me a chance to learn from my past. Every single reason they fired me was for something I didn't know was wrong at the time. I know now that you shouldn't get closer than 5 feet of a building, but it's too late because they already fired me. What good does learning that do me if I'm never gonna drive trucks again anyway? Also, who is the Beloved? I'm guessing that's what he calls God or something. He then accused me of being a YouTuber just trying to get attention. As mentioned, these videos don't get as many views as my other content, so that's a straight up lie. Cliche number 2. Also, seeing how YouTube pays you for ad revenue, getting attention is kinda the point. Like, would you say a McDonald's ad is just trying to get attention? Wow, so many cliches in just one post. Before I go, let's look at a comment I left at this dry cleaning store. The owner of this shop is literally the worst person I've ever met. If I could give them -5 stars, then I would. They were all around dreadful people. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. I have 4 more parts planned because these guys keep giving me more content to work off of. I have taken over 90 screenshots and there are still many pages more. Thanks for watching this video and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.